The Beyond the Fame podcast is fed by Lido Pizza. Lido Pizza never cuts corners. For menu and locations, visit LidoPizza.com. And of course, this podcast would not be possible without our longtime title sponsor, the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Rounding out May entertainment includes the Chippendales on May 13th and 31st. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Three-time Tony nominee Carolee Carmello stars in Kimberly Akimbo at National Theater through June 1st, as Washington, D.C. welcomes a show that won 5 Tonys on Broadway, including Best Musical of 2023. She joined me to preview the show and reflect on her biggest roles, including Tony nods for Parade, Lestrade, and Scandalous, The Life and Trials of Amy Semple McPherson. Hey, Carolee Carmello. Hey, thank you so much for joining the show today.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
We are talking to the 3-time Tony nominee, star of Kimberly Akimbo, which is going to open at National Theater May 20th through June 1st. So we're so excited to have this show here. Obviously, it dominated Broadway in 2023, winning 5 Tonys, including Best Musical, of that year. Did you actually get to catch it when it was there?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I saw it off Broadway before it transferred to Broadway, and then I saw it again because I loved it so much, and I'm just so thrilled to be a part of it. It's such a beautiful show.
I want to know where you saw it off Broadway and sort of your, try to paint a picture for us of you sitting in that seat, not really knowing what to expect, especially off Broadway. No one really knew much about it. Yeah. And so, yeah, just kind of drop us into that moment.
I went because Bonnie Milligan and Victoria Clark are friends, and I really wanted to see what they were working on. It was this tiny little show, and was written by Janine Tesori, who's had a lot of success on Broadway and is a wonderful composer. So I was just really curious, and I was blown away by it because it does that thing that I love in musicals where it has an emotional component to it, but it's also very funny. And so it takes you on all these different, feelings. It's a bit of a roller coaster, but I just think it's really successful in its writing.
You dropped a couple names that I want to, do a deeper dive in
Sure.
in a minute with Victoria Clark and Janine Tesori. Like I have so many thoughts and memories of those two. But before we even get to that, I'm assuming everyone knows the premise. We should hit them with the premise really quick. Who you play the title character, right? So
Right.
explain who she is and sort of her condition.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know anything about it, which is interesting because, so many shows that come around on tour these days are based on like a movie or a book that you already know the story to. So this is a really unique experience for theater goers because a lot of them walk in and don't know anything about the premise, but that's great. I love that. Just to give them kind of a taste of it, I'm in my 60s, and I play a girl who's a teenager who has an aging disorder, which makes her appear much older than she really is. So it's a little confusing on paper, but when you see the show, hopefully you take the ride with us. She's turning 16, and she knows that's a big year because that's sort of the life expectancy with her particular disorder. But she's got this really positive outlook, and she just is trying to make the best of her life, and she wants to have a great adventure, and she wants to make friends, and she's just really positive about everything, which is kind of amazing given all her challenges. So I'm learning from this character every night.
Oh, absolutely. What a great role to play. And the premise of, the aging 4.5 times faster than usual. It's similar. Like, remember there was a Robin Williams movie, Jack, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, actually. I think what was a similar condition, right? Or was it a slightly different medical explanation in that one? I can't remember.
I never saw that movie, but I think it's similar. I mean, they
Yeah.
never, in Kimberly Akimbo, that we never really discussed the exact name of the condition. We just
Right.
say it's a genetic condition that,
Right.
so yeah, it's similar to progeria, which I don't know if the movie Jack was based on that as well, but you kind of forget about it. At least I did when I was in the audience. You kind of forget
Yeah.
that, you're dealing with somebody who's not actually a teenager and you just go along for the ride, which is the whole point of the story, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. It's nice that there's a quote unquote medical explanation that it's rooted in the progeria, but mostly it's more of a, I mean, I don't want to say magical realism, but you know what I mean? It's exploring an extraordinary character in ordinary circumstances. So yeah, I mean, little Benjamin Button, little Jack, little Kimberly and Kimbo. It's in that vein, I'll say. Well, all right. Well, so what a great role, a chance for, an acclaimed, experienced actress like yourself to then go back and play a teenager. That's got to be really fun. And the role was originated by Victoria Clark, who actually won her second Tony for this exact role on Broadway. She had won previously for The Light in the Piazza, and then won again for Kimberly Kimbo. I actually interviewed Victoria in 2015. Gigi came to the Kennedy Center with Vanessa Hudgens. So
Oh,
so definitely, was rooting for her when I saw her win, her second for this. I was like, go ahead. I was rooting for her. But in terms of you, you're a three-time Tony nominee yourself. So like, what was it like filling the shoes of, I'll say, a fellow Broadway icon, an equally acclaimed icon?
it has its challenges because, of course, the show was built on her and what she does, and she's a very unique talent. So there is some sort of difficulty in fitting yourself into somebody else's mold, but mostly I just think the writing is so good that I think a lot of different people could play this role and be successful at it because it's just so well written. I certainly loved Victoria's performance, and I took a lot of, things from what she did, but also try to kind of make it my own. So, that's the challenge of replacing anybody in any show, which I've done a few times on Broadway too. You try to make sure you're being true to the material and also bring yourself to it. And hopefully I'm doing that successfully. You'll be the
I'm
judge.
I'm sure we'll think you did. When we show up to National Theater, I'm sure we'll agree that you're doing it justice. Well, a few seconds ago, you said the writing is so good, so I want to
Yeah.
remind folks the Tony winning. The book for this is written by David Lindsay Abaire. Am I saying that right? Abaire.
Yes, David
Um,
Bear.
yeah, and he and
Really.
and he based it on his own 2011 play comedy, and I guess he later won a Pulitzer for Rabbit Hole in 2007, but this was even before that. So what about it in the writing? I mean, we'll get to the musical numbers in a second, but the actual text, the dialogue and the situations. What about it in the writing can we elaborate on and really rave about?
I think he's just so good at writing real kind of flawed people that you will recognize from real life. It's not a musical that's, based in history or, has kings and queens. I mean, these are real people that live in New Jersey and swear and talk crap about each other. And, it's just I think he's so good at writing dialogue that's uh, smart and succinct, but also very impactful, very powerful. And his lyrics are like that too. He's written the lyrics. I don't know. It's just that great combination of emotionally strong, but also really funny. And that's very hard to do, but those are my favorite kind of shows.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of people that are good at pulling our emotional heartstrings, or they're really good at making us laugh. But to be able to do both, that's a rare skill, rare talent
It
right there.
really is. It really is.
Well, you mentioned that David Lindsay Abaire also wrote the lyrics for the musical numbers here, so let's pivot into that. And of course, the music, the melodies, and the actual music is the great aforementioned Janine Tesori, of course, who did Thoroughly Modern Millie and Carolina Change, and then one of my all-time favorites, Fun Home. I'll I'll never forget seeing that the first time, and her sitting next to her dad, and she's like begging for him to talk to her at the light, at the light, at the light. Like, oh my God, I love Fun Home so much. but
Yeah.
but how do those Fun Home skills maybe translate into the music here, to Sawyer's music here in Kimberly Kimbo?
Well, again, she's really good at writing melodies that make you feel like they come from the person's heart.
Hmm.
They're just really emotional, lyrical kind of lines of music. And she set this show in 1999, or she and David did, I guess. So I mean, I've heard her talk about the fact that she tried to kind of reference the music of the 90s in the style of these songs so that you really feel like you're in a high school in the 90s. It's got those reference points musically. But yeah, they're great melodies, but also, emotional swells that she's so good at. And uh they work so well together, she and David, to have, it's so hard to write a song that has like punchlines in it, where that there's going to be a laugh at the end of, the bar or whatever. That's so tough to do, and they do it well together. And especially in the role of Aunt Deborah, you probably remember, if you saw it in New York, Bonnie Milligan played that and won a Tony Award also for that portrayal. And her character has some hysterically funny stuff. So I just think they're a great writing team, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it.
We can't wait for everyone to see it. And especially for that '90s high school nostalgia that you're talking about. I'm sure
Yeah.
the sets and the costumes and in the songs, like you're saying, it'll all take us back to those days of. I'm trying to think of whatever some '90s high school. I guess like a Clueless or a 10 Things I Hate About You or an American Pie. Heading into Mean Girls. That was early 2000s. But that general era, we'll all love watching on stage.
Yes,
Um,
people who have come to the show who are of a certain age, who went to high school in the 90s, recognize the clothing, they say, "Oh my God, I had a shirt just like that." So it is fun to go back and look at those times, that pre-cell phone era where, things were a little different in high school.
I kind of miss that era, and I know cell phone. Each new technology. It's a double edged sword. There's great, it's great how connected we are, and we can plug stuff into a GPS. There's lots of, there's lots of benefits. But I do miss the days when we weren't our heads weren't all buried in our phones, and you
Yeah,
had a little more human
absolutely.
interaction. I kind of miss those '90s days.
No, I think we all do. Yeah, it
Yeah.
it definitely has separated us in many ways.
Fractured, yeah, absolutely. Do you want to throw out a favorite song or two of yours? I mean, while we're talking the music.
Sure. Well, the first real solo song that I get to do is at the beginning of the show, called Make a Wish, where Kimberly is just thinking about what she wants to do in the rest of her, remaining days. And she's writing a letter to the Make-A-Wish Foundation to ask for, something to be granted. It's just beautifully written and kind of joyful. And of course, it has this underlying sadness, because that she's talking about like a last wish of her life that might be ending soon. So it's got that great combination we were just talking about. And then in the second act, my favorite piece to sing is a song called Now, that is a duet with the character Seth, who plays kind of my friend slash first crush. And he and I sing this song about, doing things in the moment and kind of seizing the day. And it's just a beautiful kind of dialogue between the two of us that's set to music. I just love it.
I love that. Something just dawned on me, a question. When you're preparing for these musical numbers and the role itself, like, do you try to do you pull out any of your old yearbooks or tap into your teenage self? Like, do you try to remember what it was like? And obviously you're transposing it to the '90s, of course. But like, do you try to imagine, like, remember how you felt going through these things? Because you're going through a lot of firsts at that age. So how do you put yourself in that mindset?
Yeah, it is a long time ago for me. I went to high school in the 70s, so it's a little different. But, I think there's a universal kind of feeling that most of us have in high school, where you just feel like you're not quite fitting in. You're not quite good enough. Nobody likes you or nobody notices you. And it's just an awkward time. And I remember that feeling well, even though it's, 50 years ago, or not quite 50 years ago, but something like that. But I also have kids who are in their 20s, and I remember their high school years. And it's not an easy time. I mean, I know we can all look back and say, "Oh, wasn't high school fun?" But it's tough. It's a really um dramatic time. Everything feels so important. Like you said, there's so many firsts that you're going through. And so this show really does kind of explore that and appeals to the feeling of being an outsider in all of us.
Absolutely. Well, I think, you're talking about, going to high school in the 70s and obviously, your younger childhood was in the 60s and all this is like what, Albany, New York. So I think that's the perfect segue into. I would love to sort of chart your career a little bit if you don't mind, then we'll wrap it back around to the musical. But yeah, like growing up, did you act in school plays? Did you, I mean, I guess being in Albany, did you ever, your family take train down to New York to watch Broadway shows? I want to know, yeah, how you got bit by the bug.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a little out of the ordinary for most people that I know who are now in this business. Like I didn't do shows as a kid. I didn't even do shows in high school. My high school, I went to Albany High School, like you said, Albany, New York. And it was a big school. I mean, my graduating class was 700 and something kids. So there were a lot of us, but they didn't do a big musical. They did like kind of eclectic, weird kind of plays. I don't know. I don't remember who the theater professor was, but
But it didn't appeal to you to do at the time.
no, I mean, I think I auditioned for one of the plays, but didn't get it. Um, so I wasn't really interested at all until kind of college. I went to college in Albany at the State University there and studied business administration and had all my plans were to have, a life in corporate America and be some sort of like personnel manager or something.
Did you think you
Um,
were going to Wall Street or something, or more of like an accountant?
Probably.
Or
Um, I don't know if I have the math brain to be an accountant, but my concentration was management. So
right?
some sort of, business manager with, I was imagining a corner office and a briefcase and a really well-made suit.
Yeah.
Um,
And now you're living out of a theater trunk.
that's exactly right.
That's funny.
But I did a couple of shows during college that were just like for fun in my dormitory. We put on a couple shows in the cafeteria, which was really the first time I ever did like a book musical.
Do you remember
Uh,
which ones?
yeah, I the first one I did was Oliver. I was cast as Nancy and Oliver, which
Oh,
was
Papa. I'm
that's right.
I'm still salty at that Bill Sykes for what he did to you in that cafeteria.
How dare he?
How dare you?
And the other one we did was Fiddler on the Roof, and I was Huddle, far from the home I love.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Well, those are two good ones. So
they
okay, so you
were.
sort of got bit by the bug in the college dormitory cafeteria, you said?
Yeah, but at that point, it was just kind of being silly and,
Right.
meeting friends at the dorm. It wasn't, I never thought of it as a career path until after college, really. I was offered a show in upstate New York. There was a resort town, there still is a resort town called Lake George. And
Oh
they
my
had,
God, I remember it well. We went as I think I was like four, my family went. Yeah, I remember it's
oh,
beautiful up there
yeah, gorgeous. Um, I wouldn't want to be there in the winter, but it's beautiful in the summer.
in the summer, yeah.
So I was offered a job there the summer after I graduated to do a production of They're Playing Our Song. And it meant joining Actors Equity, which is the union that actors have to be a part of in order to work professionally. And I didn't know anything about it, but I remember the moment of kind of talking on the phone with this producer of the theater, and he was explaining to me what it meant to be a member of Actors Equity, and that if I wanted to pursue this as a career, I really did need to join this union. And if not, then I probably shouldn't join the union because it would prevent me from doing community theater, which is all I had done up to that point. So I remember standing there in my mom's house and just kind of going, "What? Pursue this professionally? Wait, what?" And so that was kind of a fork in the road that, I decided to go up and do the show that summer. And at the end of the summer, after working with all these New York actors and talented director, musical director type people, I was like, I'm going to go to New York and try this for a year and just get it out of my system and know that it was just a silly dream that, I couldn't really do this. And I had fully expected that at the end of the year, I don't know, go back and get my MBA or something.
You thought you
But
were just doing a no regrets, get it out of your system. You didn't think it was going to
absolutely.
work out.
Yes, absolutely. Because I
Wow.
thought, when I get to be 50 or 60, I don't want to think, gee, I wonder what would have happened if. So I did it, and I just got enough encouragement and enough, jobs during that first year that it made me stick around for a second year. And yeah, and now it's too late to turn back.
No, we're all glad you did. All your fans are glad that you did. So then, all right. So there, you're, Lake George. Okay, you're starting to dive into it a little in New York. How do you land that breakthrough TV role as Maple LaMarche in Remember When? And that's all caps WENN, folks, about the fictional radio station in Pittsburgh. This is 1996, that show, and it is a pivotal. Even if some listeners may, if it doesn't ring a bell, this was groundbreaking because it was the AMC network, the cable channel. It was their first original series. So you and your cast paved the way for, Walking Dead and
Mad Men.
Mad Men and Breaking Bad, all that stuff. So yeah, how do you land that role? And did you realize that it was gonna, that you were kind of making TV history?
I didn't, but I loved doing that show so much. I did 4 seasons of it, I think. And it was written by Rupert Holmes, who is a great, pop writer, but also has written a bunch of Broadway musicals. So it was so fun to work with him, and he's so, so smart.
Oh, he's
Um,
the Escape the Pina Colada song
yes,
guy.
exactly. But he also, he's written for Broadway too.
Sure.
But it was, how did I land it? I don't know. It was just an audition that I had an agent at that point, and so the agent set up this audition, and it was a really well-written scene, and I just had to play this sort of gum-chewing New Yorker, and I don't know. I just kind of made a bold choice, and they seemed to like it, I guess.
Wow. So
She
it was
was.
a New York audition though. You didn't fly to LA for that. It was in New
Oh,
York.
yes, we filmed in New York.
Okay.
Yes.
Standing in for Pittsburgh.
That's right. That's right. In a
Gotcha.
little sound stage in Queens. Yeah.
Wow. But so even though you didn't know it was making history, was it at least, in hindsight, when you see Mad Men and Breaking Bad and all these other AMC shows becoming the cream of the crop, all the most acclaimed shows on television, in hindsight, were you able to kind of look back and appreciate and be like, yeah, me and we together as a team, on Remember When, we kind of, got the ball rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those shows probably wouldn't have happened if not for Remember When. I think it really did sort of blaze a trail. And even though it didn't get a lot of acclaim at the time, I think it opened up kind of a new sort of one camera kind of story filming thing that they went on to really perfect. So yeah, I feel proud of that. I think we did pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it didn't get that much acclaim, but you did. You and your cast, you did get nominated at SAG Awards for the best
That's true.
ensemble comedy. And I gotta say, there are new winners and losers, but losing to Seinfeld, no shame in that.
Yeah, I think we were, yeah, it's like when we opened Tuck Everlasting opposite Hamilton that year on Broadway. I was like, well, I guess, if you're up against the best, what can you say?
Yeah, exactly. It's an honor to be, in the same breath as Hamilton, and in the arc of everything.
Of course.
Well, that's cool. Well, I'm glad we were able to allow our listeners to remember when. We'll hold it up. But acclaim did come a little on Broadway. Continued for you. I want to go into in 1999, your first Tony nomination for Best Actress in a Musical for Parade. A major show, obviously. Some pretty heavy subject matter too, right? It was the 1913 trial and then 1915 lynching of a Jewish American, Leo Frank in Georgia. But Jason Robert Brown, the amazingly talented Jason Robert Brown turned that into a musical. So yeah, memories of staging that. A lot of people remember Parade now, but you were right there making it happen.
Yeah, the original Broadway cast. I felt so lucky to be a part of that. It was directed by Hal Prince, legendary. And the book was written by Alfred Urey, who's just so brilliantly talented and who grew up in Georgia as a Jewish man. And so he knew intimately that kind of those people and that kind of culture. Jason was a kid, I mean, I remember the very first reading that we did. I didn't know Jason Robert Brown at all at that point, and I just remember hearing the songs and thinking, how does this kind of powerful, soulful stuff come out of this 23-year-old kid, I think he was then? And it just was, you know, a- as an actor in this business, you do a lot of kind of new material that just doesn't quite work, but this was one of those shows that even from the first reading, I remember thinking, this is special. This is something that should see, a Broadway stage someday. And it took many years from that first reading for it to get to Lincoln Center, but I'm glad it finally did. I wish it had run longer. It was really kind of disappointing the way it played out. That first run was pretty short, but I'm so glad it got revived, and I'm so glad people are enjoying it on tour right now. It's going around the country just like we are.
Yeah, crisscrossing the country along with Carolee Carmello. And yes, like you're saying, the Broadway revival, that was just a couple years ago. And that was Ben Platt and Michaela Diamond, and it really brought it back into the forefront. Speaking of which, Ben Platt, Dear Evan Hansen, I saw him that was started in DC at Arena Stage before it
Oh,
went to
kidding.
Broadway.
I didn't
So I
realize.
remember seeing Ben Platt, and I remember being like, "Oh my gosh, this show is special." So
Mhm.
DC audiences are ready for Kimberly Kimbo as well. It's a big theater. I mean, West Side Story started here before Broadway. Like a lot of shows started here. So it's great. Okay, and then we have to hit I know you did a bunch of other shows. We'll get to them in a minute, but I'm just gonna knock out the three Tony nods first, if that's okay with
Okay.
you. So the second Tony nomination, this time Best Featured Actress in a Musical for Lestat.
Lestat,
Yes,
yeah. It's kind of some people might know the movie Interview with a Vampire,
of
which
course.
is based on one of the Anne Rice novels. And Vampire Lestat was another Anne Rice novel. And they kind of put those two books together to make the musical.
Right, but the music was Elton John and Bernie
Yes.
Taupin. Like, I mean, so
Yes.
yeah, to combine those two on the music with with Anne Rice Vampire Chronicles, that's a mashup right there. But yeah,
That's
was it rewarding getting to sing Elton and Bernie songs? I mean, that must have been a dream.
It was totally rewarding. And I still can't believe that the show closed as quickly as it did. You're talking about I'm so fortunate to have these Tony nominations, but every single time I've been nominated, my show has been closed already
And you
because
lost to Bernadette Peters for "And to Get Your Gun" on Parade, and then Patina Miller best year for Pippin in for Lestat. Come on,
yeah,
voters.
my shows weren't even open anymore. So,
Yeah.
what can you do? But yeah, Lestat was a great experience, even though it didn't last very long. It was so fun to play a vampire, so fun to be like this kind of otherworldly creature, and
Yeah.
she's a really interesting character. I was playing the mother of the vampire Lestat, which is kind of hysterical because Hugh Panaro was playing Lestat, and he's, I think, a year younger than I am. I was playing his mother. So, you know, being an actor is always an exciting experience.
Well, now you're playing a teenager, so there you go.
Right. You never know
Um,
what's going to come your way.
You never know. You got to be ready to do it all. Okay, and then rounding it out, the third Tony nomination for Best Actress in a Musical was for something called "Scandalous: The Life and Trials of Amy Semple McPherson." Remind If our listeners hear that and they're like, well, "I don't remember what that was about." Remind us what that was about.
Also short-lived. Amy Semple McPherson was a preacher, a real life person who was very, very famous in her day, mostly during the 20s, 30s, 40s. And she started this church out in Los Angeles. But she was a preacher who traveled all around the country and had all these great kind of escapades. And then she was involved with a lot of scandals like in her midlife, and then died of a drug overdose. I mean, it was a really kind of salacious story at the time. And and nobody really knows much about her, but she had a fascinating life. So I loved playing that character because she was, pretty juicy. But again, didn't last very long. So hopefully one of these days I'll get to do a show that's that's nominated and I get to play it for a while.
Well, you know what, folks? I mean, those three Tony nominations, those shows may have not had long runs, but you were in some big, blockbuster roles, if you want to call them that. You got to do, Broadway's The Addams Family in 2010 with Nathan Lane and BB Newworth. You did Finding Neverland in 2015 with Matthew Morrison, of course, of Glee, and Kelsey Grammer, a bunch of other folks. Oh, and you also did Showboat at Carnegie Hall in '08. So yeah, you've done some big ones as
And
well. In addition,
Mamma
Mamma
Mia,
Mia, yeah.
the longest run I've ever done. Talk about a show that had a nice long life. I did that show for about 4 years. So yeah, I have been lucky to do some good shows. Just happens that the ones that were Tony nominated were the short ones.
Well, awards are awards, and you know what? Maybe that actually says more about your acting chops because it's easier. I don't want to say easier, but it's one thing to get nominated for a show that has a well-known brand going in, and voters are going to tune into it. But maybe it says more about your chops that you were able to get nominated for things that were more short-lived because you had to have made an impression in a short amount of time. That's how we'll spin it, at
That's
least.
a nice way to put it, Jason. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll take it and run with that. And
Uh,
who did you play in Mamma Mia, by the way?
Donna, the mom, the if you know the movie, the Meryl
Yeah,
Streep part.
the
Yeah.
Meryl Streep part. Man, what a fun role getting to sing ABBA.
Uh, People love that show, boy, and it's coming back to Broadway this summer.
Absolutely. Well, stay tuned for that. Do you have it's hard to say do you have a favorite role of any of the ones we mentioned or maybe an underrated one we haven't even mentioned that we want folks to look back at your credits and remember you for that one if we haven't mentioned it yet.
Gosh, well, Parade was definitely one of the most special ones because,
Yeah.
like I said, it was the first time I ever did an original production and created something from the ground up. I also did, this wasn't on Broadway, but a few years ago out in California, I did a production of Gypsy, and that's an amazing role to play Mama Rose. That's one of those like bucket list parts that any woman of a certain age wants to play. So I had a blast doing that. I also loved playing Mrs. Lovett. I did a production that was very unique of Sweeney Todd down at the Barrow Street Theater. It was an off-Broadway theater, and it was this really unique, tiny little version of Sweeney Todd that was the whole little theater was transformed into a pie shop, and so people would come into this little pie shop, and there really wasn't a stage. We just kind of walked on the tables and stood in front of them and
Nice.
did
Where
the
was
whole
this?
show at the Barrow Street Theater down in the West Village in New York.
Wow, the worst pies in the village. That's so cool. Well, yeah, thank
Really
you for
fun.
answering. I'm always curious which role, because we see which got the nominations in the box office, but I'm always curious to ask the artists themselves, what holds a special place in their heart, in their career.
Yeah.
But now it'll be Kimberly Akimbo, of course. You got to
Of
come
course.
see it.
Of course.
I know we're somewhat up against the clock, but I want to at least remind folks on some of your TV roles. You got to do some Frasier and Law and Order, and what else? Smash, Madam
Marvelous
Secretary,
Mrs.
the
Maisel.
Deuce, yeah, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, of course, Dope Sick,
Yeah.
Blue Bloods.
Nope. Yeah.
A lot of the big shows of the last 15, 20 years, 30 years you've gotten to do. So do you ask the similar question as before? Like, do you have one of on television role that you're particularly proud of?
Oh, probably you were mentioning Maple LaMarche before in
Sure.
Remember When. She's kind of my favorite TV character. But I really did enjoy Dope Sick. You just mentioned that. That was a limited series starring Michael Keaton about the pharmaceutical industry, and that was fascinating to be a part of. And
That
uh,
the Sacklers and all that stuff.
exactly. Yeah. Really dark story. There wasn't a lot of comedy in that one, but it was a really powerful series. So I was glad to be a part of that.
Everybody go back and check that out on Hulu. Yeah, could
Yeah.
we had the creator Danny Strong came on
Oh yeah.
when that was released.
He's
But
so
folks,
great.
if you missed it, double back to that for sure. All right. Well, you've been generous with your time. I really, really appreciate it. This show is opening here. It's going to be sort of, mid to late May, and of course, the Tonys are coming up in early June. Do you have any rooting interest? Are you rooting for any particular shows? Any of the nominees this year?
Oh gosh, it's an interesting season. Lots of cool shows open. And of course, I haven't been around to see a lot of it because we left town in September. So I've missed a lot of this season. I did get to see Oh Mary on my Christmas break, which was hysterical. But yeah, I haven't seen a lot of the new musicals. So I'm just gonna root for my friends, and I won't tell you who they are just in case.
Nice. And I will say, Oh Mary is competing for Best New Play
Right.
this year. And it will be going up against one that I have a little rooting interest in. John Proctor is the villain, only simply because we it started at Studio Theater here in DC. It was and we interviewed the playwright for that, Kimberly
Very
Balfour.
cool.
It's sort of a reimagining of the Crucible, looking at John Proctor as the villain, obviously. But so many good. That's just on the play side. The musical side has some cool. Buena Vista Social Club and Death Becomes. There's some cool nominees on there this year too. So everybody tune in. June 8th, I believe it is. But first, let's end by inviting everyone out to what we know is already a Tony champ, Kimberly Akimbo at 1-5, including Best Musical in 2023. And invite them out. Invite our listeners out. Tell them why they can't miss Kimberly Akimbo at National Theater May 20th through June 1st.
This is a show that will make you feel better about life. And I think we all need that right now. It's just joyful and funny and touching. And God knows we need a boost right about now.
We absolutely do. So much uncertainty in the country. It'll be nice to go laugh, cry, sing along to a unique musical where you are playing a teenage girl. It's going to be
That's right.
amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I love doing deep dives into the career and hitting the highlights and hearing some of your personal favorites. It was a blast chatting with you.
Thanks, you too.
All right. Good luck with the show.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.